The screwdriver felt warm in Danny Reeves' hand as he placed it on the table before the review committee. Three alien professors stared at it like he had dropped a dead animal in front of them. Professor Yelmer Doss picked it up with one of her forearms. She was Kalani, tall and elegant, with skin the color of pale silver. She turned the tool slowly, examining it the way a scientist might examine an ancient fossil. "This," she said, "is what you intend to use for your final project." "Among other things," Danny replied. "Also wire cutters, a soldering iron, and basic hand tools." The second professor, a squat Borean named Grit Malvain, made a sound like grinding rocks. His crystalline skin flickered with orange light, which Danny had learned meant either amusement or disgust. "You do understand that we have quantum fabricators available? Machines that can assemble components at the molecular level." "I understand, Professor." The third professor uncoiled slightly from his hovering chair. Orin Hest was Thessan, serpentine, and covered in scales that shifted between blue and green. "Let me be certain I comprehend your proposal, human. You wish to build a reconnaissance drone using mechanical assembly. No quantum processors. No neural link controls. No synthetic polymers." "That is correct. And you expect this device to compete against the projects of students who are using proper technology." Danny kept his voice steady. "I expect it to fly, Professor. I expect it to complete the required tasks. The evaluation criteria do not specify which technology must be used." Professor Doss set the screwdriver down with a soft click. "Mr. Reeves, you are the first human accepted into the Advanced Propulsion Program. We took a chance on your species. Your application showed promise. But this proposal suggests you do not understand the level of sophistication expected at this institution." Danny had prepared for this. He had known from the moment he submitted his proposal that they would reject it. Humans had only joined galactic civilization 12 years ago. They were still considered primitive by most standards. A human wanting to use hand tools was simply confirming what everyone already believed. "With respect, Professor, I understand perfectly," he said. "I also understand that engineering is about solving problems with available resources. On Earth, we learned to build with what we had. We did not always have molecular assemblers or quantum computers. We had hands and minds and determination." Professor Malvain's crystals flared brighter. "Earth is a death world. Category 7. Your people survived through stubbornness, not sophistication. That may have worked on your planet, but this is the Galactic Institute. We have standards. I'm not asking you to lower your standards. I am asking you to evaluate my drone on its performance, not its construction method." The three professors exchanged glances. Danny could not read alien expressions well, but he sensed they were communicating something between themselves. Professor Hess spoke first. "Very well, human. We will allow your proposal to proceed." Danny felt a moment of relief before the professor continued. "You will be given a workspace appropriate to your chosen methods. You will have access to the recycling center for your materials. And you will present your finished drone at the final evaluation alongside the other students." His scales shifted to a darker blue. "When you fail publicly, perhaps you will learn why we abandoned such primitive approaches centuries ago. Thank you for the opportunity, Professor. Do not thank us." Professor Doss rose from her seat, towering over Danny. "We are not doing you a favor. We are teaching you a lesson about hubris. You may go." Danny collected his screwdriver and walked to the door. Behind him, he heard Professor Malvain mutter something in his native language. The translation implant in Danny's ear rendered it as, "Humans. They think because they survived a hostile planet, they can survive anything." The corridor outside the review chamber was filled with students moving between classes. Several of them looked at Danny as he emerged. Word had already spread about the human who wanted to use hand tools. A group of Kalani students whispered and laughed as he passed. Danny ignored them. He had grown up on a farm outside New Auckland, where his grandfather had taught him to fix broken machinery with whatever was available. The old man had rebuilt a crashed crop duster using parts from 3 different vehicles and sheer stubborn will. Danny still remembered watching those weathered hands work, turning junk into something that flew. "The best tool," his grandfather had always said, "is the one you know how to use." Danny reached the observation window at the end of the corridor and looked out at the stars. The Galactic Institute floated in orbit around Velan, a gas giant with swirling purple storms. Ships came and went constantly, carrying students and supplies and visitors from 100 worlds. Somewhere out there was Earth. Somewhere out there was home. He gripped the screwdriver tighter. It had belonged to his grandfather. The handle was worn smooth from decades of use. It had helped build machines on a farm on Earth, and now it would help build a drone in the heart of galactic civilization. The professors expected him to fail. The other students expected him to fail. Maybe even the administrators who had accepted his application expected him to fail. Danny smiled quietly to himself. He had been underestimated before. The workspace they gave Danny was an insult. A storage room in the lower levels of the station, barely larger than a closet, filled with dust and forgotten equipment. The message was clear. This is where primitive work belongs. Danny looked around the cramped space and smiled. It was perfect that no distractions. No students walking past to mock him. No professors stopping by to remind him of his inevitable failure. Just four walls, a workbench, and silence that he spent his first day cleaning. He pushed old containers into corners, wiped down the workbench, and organized his small collection of tools. By evening, the storage room had become a workshop. Simple, functional. The next morning, Danny made his way to the recycling center. The center was located in the station's lower sections, far from the gleaming laboratories where other students worked. Here, broken equipment and discarded materials waited to be processed and reconstituted. Most students never visited. Why would they, when quantum fabricators could create anything they needed from base elements? An elderly Borean sat behind the intake desk, his crystalline skin dull with age. A name tag identified him as Grell. "Help you?" Grell asked without looking up. "I am looking for salvage materials. Motors, guide, laid metals. Anything I can use for a drone project." Grell finally raised his head. His eyes, small and dark within his crystal face, studied Danny with sudden interest. "You are the human, the one using hand tools. Word travels fast. Word travels faster when the professors complain about it in the faculty lounge." Grell rose slowly from his seat. "Come with me." He led Danny through rows of bins and containers, pointing out useful items as they walked. Broken cleaning drones with intact motors. Spools of copper wire from decommissioned communication systems. Hull plating too small for structural use, but perfect for a lightweight frame. "You know a lot about this equipment," Danny said. "I was an engineer once, before budget cuts eliminated my position." Grell stopped beside a bin of discarded electronics. "Now I sort garbage, but I still remember what things are worth." Danny began selecting components, checking each one carefully before adding it to his growing pile. Grell watched him work with an expression Danny could not quite identify. "The professors think you will fail," Grell said finally. "I know, they are probably right. Quantum-enhanced systems outperform mechanical ones in almost every measurable way." Danny pulled a small motor from the bin and tested its resistance by spinning the shaft with his fingers. It moved smoothly. "Good bearings. Almost every way," he repeated. "You have something specific in mind. My grandfather used to say that the fanciest machine in the world is useless if you cannot fix it when it breaks." He rebuilt a crop duster, once using parts from 3 different vehicles. It flew for 20 more years. Grell made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Your grandfather sounds like a stubborn man." He was. He also taught me everything I know. Over the following days, Danny established a routine. Mornings in the recycling center, gathering materials. Afternoons in his workshop, sorting and testing components. Evenings sketching designs on paper, a practice that drew confused stares from anyone who saw it. One evening, a Kalani student appeared in his doorway. Danny recognized her from the corridor outside the review chamber. She had been among those who whispered and laughed. "I am Sarah Nullen," she said. "I wanted to see your workspace." Danny gestured at the cramped room. "This is it." Sarah stepped inside, her forearms folded across her chest. She looked at the bins of salvaged parts, the hand-drawn sketches pinned to the wall. the simple tools arranged on the workbench. Her expression was difficult to read. Why? She asked. Why what? Why are you doing this? You could use the fabricators like everyone else. You could use neural link assembly. No one would judge you for adapting to better technology. Danny set down the wire he had been stripping. On Earth, we have a concept called appropriate technology. It means using the right solution for the situation, not just the most advanced one. And hand tools are the right solution here. Maybe, maybe not, but they're the solution I understand. The solution I can maintain and repair without specialized equipment. He picked up his grandfather's screwdriver. This tool is over 60 years old. It still works perfectly. Can you say the same about a quantum fabricator? Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Then she asked, "Can I watch you work?" Danny was surprised, but did not show it. "If you want. It is not very exciting. I have never seen anyone build something with their hands before. Only through neural interface." She unfolded her arms and moved closer to the workbench. "Show me." Danny handed her a length of wire. "Hold this steady while I strip the other end." It was the beginning of something unexpected. Sarah returned the next day, and the day after that. She asked questions constantly. How did the motor work? Why did he choose copper wire over aluminum? What held the frame together if not molecular bonding? Danny answered each question patiently. He found that teaching helped him think through his own design choices. And somewhere along the way, he realized he had found an ally in the most unlikely place. The drone was beginning to take shape. For rotors, a central chassis, a camera system built from salvaged sensors. It was crude. It was mechanical. It was exactly what Danny needed. 3 weeks into construction, the drone began to look like something real. 4 arms extended from a central body, each holding a motor and rotor assembly. Wires ran along the frame like veins, connecting power systems to controls to sensors. It was not beautiful. The welds were visible. The joints were mechanical. But it was solid. Danny held a soldering iron steady as he connected another circuit. Sarah sat on a crate nearby, watching his hands move with practiced precision. "How do you know where each wire goes?" she asked. "You do not have a neural map of the system." "I drew one." Danny nodded toward the sketches on the wall. "Every connection is documented. If something fails, I know exactly where to look." That seems slow. It is. But it also means I understand every part of this machine. I built it. I can fix it. The door opened and Professor Mulvane entered without knocking. His crystalline form seemed too large for the small space. He looked around the workshop with obvious disdain. "Still playing with antiques, human?" Danny did not stop working. "Still concerned about my project, Professor?" "Concerned?" "No. Curious." Mulvane picked up a piece of wire from the workbench and examined it. "Copper. You are using copper wire for data transmission. Do you have any idea how inefficient that is compared to optical threading? About 40% less efficient, depending on the application. Then why use it?" Danny finally set down his soldering iron and faced the professor. "Because copper is everywhere. Because it can be repaired with basic tools. Because when your optical threading breaks in the field, you need a specialized facility to fix it. When my copper wire breaks, I need a knife and some tape." Mulvane's crystals flickered with that orange light again. "You assume your equipment will break. I assume all equipment eventually breaks. The question is whether you can fix it when it does." The professor dropped the wire back on the bench. "Your philosophy might work on your primitive planet, but this is civilized space. We have maintenance systems, repair drones, replacement fabricators. Equipment failure is a solved problem. With respect, Professor, no problem is ever truly solved. It is only managed until something unexpected happens." Mulvane stared at him for a long moment. Then he turned and left without another word. Sarah let out a breath. That was brave. Or foolish. Probably both. Danny picked up his soldering iron again. "Hand me the resistor." The days blended together. Wake, work, sleep, repeat. Danny fell into the rhythm of creation, his hands moving automatically through tasks his grandfather had taught him decades ago. Strip wire, twist connections, solder joints, test circuits. The same motions repeated thousands of times, building something from nothing. Sarah became his assistant and his student. She learned to hold components steady while he worked. She learned to read his hand-drawn schematics. She even learned to use the soldering iron, though her forearms made the process awkward. "This is strange," she admitted one evening, examining a motor she had helped install. "I have built things before, but always through neural interface. I tell the fabricator what I want, and it creates it. This is different." "Different how?" "I can feel it. The weight of the metal, the heat of the solder, the resistance when a bolt tightens." She touched the motor housing with two of her hands. "When I build through interface, there's no feeling. The object simply appears. But this, I made this with my own hands. It feels real in a way nothing else has." Danny understood exactly what she meant. It was why he had insisted on this approach, even knowing the professors would mock him. There was something important about physical creation, about the connection between maker and machine. One night, disaster struck. Danny was testing the rotor systems when one of the motors began to smoke. He cut power immediately, but the damage was done. The motor was burned out. Its internal coils melted from a short circuit somewhere in his wiring. He stared at the ruined component for a long time. He had no spare motors. The recycling center had nothing comparable, and the fabricators would not produce mechanical components without professor approval, which he would never receive. "What will you do?" Sarah asked quietly. Danny picked up the dead motor and turned it over in his hands. The housing was intact. The shaft was undamaged. Only the internal coils had failed. "I will rewind it," he said. "Rewind it. Replace the coils. By hand." He began disassembling the motor, exposing the burned copper inside. "My grandfather showed me how. It takes time, but it works." "How much time?" Danny calculated in his head. 3 days. Maybe 4. "The evaluation is in 2 weeks. Then I had better get started." For the next 3 days, Danny barely slept. He wound copper wire around the motor core, counting turns, maintaining tension, creating the electromagnetic coils that would make the shaft spin. It was delicate work, requiring patience and precision. One mistake would mean starting over. Sarah brought him food. Grell stopped by with encouragement and a better grade of wire he had found in a forgotten storage bin. Even some of the maintenance workers poked their heads in to watch the strange human performing surgery on a simple motor that on the 4th morning. Danny connected the rebuilt motor to a power source and held his breath. The shaft began to spin. Smooth and steady, exactly as it should. Danny allowed himself a small smile. The drone was still alive. The rebuilt motor worked, but Danny's problems were not over. 1 week before the evaluation, he discovered that his control system was too slow. The drone flew, but it responded to commands with a noticeable delay. In a precision test, that delay would cost him points. Possibly enough to fail. He sat in his workshop late at night, staring at the circuit boards he had assembled. The logic was correct. The wiring was clean. But somewhere in the system, something was creating lag that he could not eliminate. "You look terrible," Sarah said from the doorway. Danny rubbed his eyes. "I cannot find the problem. Everything should work, but the response time is off by nearly half a second." "Have you slept?" "A few hours. Maybe." Sarah entered and sat beside him. "The other students finished their projects days ago. They are practicing flight patterns while you struggle with basic response times." "I know. Their drones are quantum-enhanced, neural-linked. They respond to thought faster than nerve signals travel." She paused. "Yours responds to mechanical inputs through copper wire." "I know," Danny repeated, more sharply than he intended. They sat in silence. Danny could hear the hum of the station around them, the constant background noise of machinery and life support systems. Somewhere above them, in the gleaming laboratories, students were perfecting drones that made his look like a child's toy. The door opened again. Professor Hest glided in, his serpentine body moving with unnatural smoothness. His scales were dark blue, almost black. "Working late, human." Danny stood. "Professor, I heard you encountered difficulties." Hest circled the workshop slowly, examining the drone on the workbench. "Control response issues, correct? A common problem with mechanical systems. Quantum processors would eliminate it entirely." "I am sure they would. I have a proposal." Hess stopped in front of Danny, his eyes reflecting the workshop lights. "Accept a quantum processing module. Just one small component. I will ensure it is approved, and I will guarantee you a passing grade. Danny felt something tighten in his chest. A passing grade. After all this work, all this struggle, he could simply accept and be done. No more sleepless nights. No more scrambling for solutions. Just one compromise. Why, he asked. Because I'm not cruel. You have worked hard. Your determination is admirable, even if your methods are foolish. There is no shame in accepting superior technology. And if I refuse, Hess' scales shifted to a lighter blue. Then you will likely fail. Your drone cannot compete with quantum-enhanced systems. You must know this. Danny looked at his drone. He had built every piece of it with his own hands. He had wound motor coils and soldered circuits and stripped wire until his fingers were raw. It was crude and slow and imperfect, but it was his. Thank you for the offer, Professor. But no. Hess stared at him for a long moment. Then he turned and left without a word. Sarah waited until the door closed. That was your chance. I know. You might fail now. I know that too. Danny sat back down and picked up a circuit board. But accepting his help would prove everything they believe about humans. That we cannot compete. That our methods are inferior. That we need their technology to succeed. Maybe their technology is superior. Maybe it is. But that does not mean it is always the right choice. Danny began tracing the circuits with his finger, following the paths of electrons through the system. My grandfather failed at projects all the time. He said failure was where learning lived. Did he ever fail at something important? Danny thought about it. He tried to build an automated irrigation system once. Took him 3 years. It never worked properly. Flooded the fields twice, dried them out once. Nearly bankrupted the farm. What did he do? He simplified it. Threw out the automation entirely. Built a manual system with pumps and valves that anyone could operate. Danny stopped tracing and looked at Sarah. It worked for 40 years. The answer was suddenly obvious. Danny began stripping components from his control board. Sarah watched inalarm. What are you doing? Simplifying. He removed a processor, set it aside, removed another. I've been trying to make this system do too much. Processing sensor data, calculating flight adjustments, managing power distribution. Each step adds delay. But you need those functions. I need some of them. Others I can handle manually. He grabbed a clean board and began laying out a new circuit. Basic stabilization only. I will control the rest directly. My reflexes might not be as fast as a quantum processor, but they are faster than my overcomplicated control system. He worked through the night, rebuilding the entire control architecture from scratch. Simpler circuits, fewer components, direct connections between input and output. By morning, he had a system that was crude but responsive that he powered up the drone and tested the controls. The response was immediate. Not perfect, not as smooth as a Neuralink system, but fast enough. Sarah watched the drone hover steady in the cramped workshop. You did it. I did something. Danny landed the drone and checked the power levels. Whether it is enough, we will find out at the evaluation. He thought about calling his mother, but the expense was too great for another call so soon. Instead, he sat quietly and remembered his grandfather's workshop, the smell of machine oil and sawdust, the sound of hands building something from nothing. I hope you can see this, he whispered to no one. I hope I make you proud. The evaluation hall was enormous. A dome of transparent material showed the stars above, while a complex obstacle course filled the space below. Pillars rose at random intervals. Hoops hung at various heights. Target zones glowed on platforms scattered throughout the arena. Danny carried his drone to the staging area, where 20 other students waited with their creations. The contrast was immediate and obvious. Their drones gleamed with polished synthetic materials and smooth curves designed by algorithms. His drone looked like something assembled in a garage, because that was essentially what it was. Laughter rippled through the group. Danny ignored it. Professor Doss stood at the main podium, flanked by Professors Mulvane and Hest. Administrator Callow Bren, a neutral-faced Thessin, observed from nearby. Welcome to the final evaluation, Doss announced. Your drones will be tested on 4 criteria. Speed through the obstacle course. Precision in hitting designated targets. Adaptability to changing conditions. and reliability across multiple runs. She explained the scoring system while Danny studied the course. The obstacles were challenging, but not impossible. He had practiced similar patterns in his workshop, though at a much smaller scale. Speed test first, Doss continued. Each drone will complete one circuit of the course. Fastest time wins maximum points. The students launched their drones one by one. Danny watched quantum-enhanced machines cut through the air like they were not even trying. Neural-linked controls allowed pilots to think their drones through gaps with perfect precision. Times flashed on the main display. Fast, faster, impossibly fast. When Danny's turn came, he carried his drone to the starting position. More laughter from the crowd. Beginning human evaluation, the system announced. Danny launched. His drone rose steadily, and he guided it through the first set of obstacles. It was slower than the others. He could feel the limitations of mechanical controls, the slight delay between thought and action. But the drone flew true. He completed the course in 37 seconds. The leading time was 22 seconds. Danny ranked near the bottom. Professor Mulvane's crystals glowed with satisfaction. Precision test, Doss announced. Target the designated zones in sequence. This test went better. Danny's manual control allowed him to adjust for small errors that automatic systems sometimes missed. He hit 8 of 10 targets, placing him in the middle of the pack. Respectable, though not impressive, he could feel the professors watching him, waiting for the inevitable failure. Adaptability test, Doss said. Environmental conditions will change during the course. Adapt or fail. The first students launched. Their drones moved beautifully through the initial obstacles. Then the lights flickered and an electromagnetic pulse swept through the arena. Chaos erupted. Quantum processors scrambled. Neural links disconnected. Synthetic sensors overloaded with false data. One by one, the sophisticated drones began to tumble, their advanced systems unable to cope with the interference. Danny watched 3 drones crash before he understood what was happening. The test was designed to simulate real-world conditions. Combustion, solar flares, electronic warfare, situations where delicate technology became a liability. When his turn came, Danny launched with steady hands. The electromagnetic pulse hit his drone like a wave. Warning lights flickered on his simple control panel. For a moment, the drone shuddered. Then it stabilized. His basic systems had no quantum processors to scramble. His mechanical controls operated on simple electrical signals that the pulse could not disrupt. His shielded wiring, wrapped carefully during construction, protected the essential circuits. Danny flew through the course while the interference continued. His drone was not graceful, but it was functional. He completed the adaptability test with full marks. The hall had gone quiet. Reliability test, Doss announced, her voice noticeably less confident than before. Each drone must complete 5 runs without maintenance. This was where complex systems often failed. Microscopic stresses accumulated. Quantum states drifted. Neural links developed timing errors. By the 3rd or 4th run, even well-built drones began to show problems. Danny watched the other students struggle. Drones that had performed perfectly began missing targets. Flight paths became erratic. 2 more crashed entirely when their damaged processors finally gave out. Danny launched for his first run. Completed it. Launched for his second. Completed it. 3rd run. 4th run. 5th run. Each time, his simple mechanical drone performed exactly as expected. No drift. No degradation. No surprises. When the final scores appeared, Danny stared at them in disbelief. Speed, 18th place. Precision, 10th place. Adaptability, 1st place. Reliability, 1st place. Overall, 3rd place, 3rd place. Against quantum-enhanced drones built with the best technology galactic civilization had to offer. Sarah pushed through the crowd and threw all 4 arms around him. You did it. You actually did it. The other students stared. The professors stood frozen at their podium. Administrator Bren was typing rapidly on a datapad, probably checking the scores for errors. Danny looked at his drone, sitting battered but functional on the return platform. He thought about his grandfather, who had never left Earth, who had never seen the stars, who had taught a young boy that the best tool was the one you knew how to use. "Thank you," Danny whispered to the memory. "Thank you for everything." The evaluation hall emptied slowly. Students collected their drones and departed in small groups, many of them casting strange looks at Danny as they passed. Some looked confused. A few looked angry. One or two actually nodded with something like respect. Danny was securing his drone when Professor Hest approached. The electromagnetic interference was not a standard test variable, the professor said. His scales were pale, almost white. "It was added specifically because we knew your drone would struggle with precision. We expected it to destroy you." Danny looked up. It was a fair test. Real-world conditions include interference. It was meant to prove a point about primitive technology. Hess paused. It proved the opposite point. The professor turned and left without waiting for a response. Administrator Brent approached next, datapad in hand. "Mr. Reeves, impressive performance. The review committee would like to discuss your results." "Am I in trouble?" "Quite the opposite." Bren's neutral expression did not change. "Professor Doss has requested a private meeting. Her office, when you are ready." Danny finished securing his drone and made his way to the faculty level. The corridors here were wider, cleaner, decorated with awards and achievements from centuries of galactic education. He felt out of place with his worn clothes and calloused hands. Professor Doss was waiting in her office. The space was large and filled with models of famous engineering projects. Ships, stations, planetary systems, all rendered in perfect detail. "Sit," she said. Danny Saturday Doss studied him for a long moment. Her forearms were folded, her silver face unreadable. "Your drone should not have performed as well as it did." "But it did." "Yes, it did." She unfolded her arms and picked up a model from her desk. A small ship, elegant and complex. "This was my final project. 60 years ago. Top of my class. The most sophisticated design my professors had ever seen." She set it down. "It would have failed your evaluation." Danny said nothing. "The electromagnetic test was extreme," Doss continued. "Beyond normal parameters. We designed it to create conditions where your drone would certainly fail. Instead, we created conditions where our own technology failed." She looked directly at him. "You understand why this troubles me? Because it challenges what you have believed for decades." "Precisely." Doss rose from her seat and moved to the window. The stars spread out before her, endless and indifferent. The Galactic Institute has taught for centuries that advancement means complexity. Better technology means more sophisticated systems. We have built a civilization on this principle. It is not a bad principle, Danny said. Advanced technology has achieved incredible things, but has blind spots. Doss turned back to face him. Your drone survived because it was simple enough to not need protection from interference. It completed multiple runs because it had fewer components that could fail. It succeeded where our technology failed because you understood something we had forgotten. What is that? That sometimes the old ways work because they were designed by people who could not afford to fail. Doss returned to her desk. Your species survived a death world with minimal technology. You learned lessons that we, with our abundance, never needed to learn. Danny thought about his grandfather again, about the farm, the rebuilt machinery, the irrigation system that worked for 40 years. We call it appropriate technology, using the right solution for the situation, not just the most advanced one. An elegant concept. Doss was quiet for a moment. I want you to teach it. Danny blinked. Excuse me. I'm offering you a position. Develop a course on resilient engineering. Teach our students what you know. Make them understand that complexity is not always strength. I'm still a student myself. Not anymore. Doss pushed a document across the desk. Effective immediately, you have been awarded full credits for your program. You will graduate with honors. And if you accept, you will return next term as an instructor. Danny stared at the document. His name printed in alien script. His achievement officially recognized. One condition, he said. Name it. The course includes hands-on construction. Students build with tools, not interfaces. They feel what they create. Doss almost smiled. I would expect nothing less. That evening, Danny stood on the observation deck. Sarah found him there, watching ships come and go. I heard about the teaching position, she said. Are you going to accept? I think so. Danny pulled something from his pocket. His grandfather's screwdriver, worn smooth from decades of use. Seems like a waste not to pass this knowledge along. Professor Mulvane is already complaining. He says he will set education back centuries. Good. Maybe it needs to go back a little. Danny looked at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth. Somewhere out there was home. My grandfather never left our planet. Never saw any of this. But his hands built things that reached the stars anyway. Sarah stood beside him in comfortable silence. Then she said, I want to take your course. When it begins, you already know the basics. I want to learn more. I want to understand why this matters. She touched his arm with one of her hands. You changed something today. In the evaluation, yes, but also in me. In how I think about building. Danny smiled. It was a small victory. One human, one drone, 1 point proven. But small victories added up. His grandfather had taught him that too. He held up the screwdriver, letting the starlight play across its surface. 60 years old, carried across light years. Still working perfectly. Some tools, Danny thought, never became obsolete, and some lessons were worth teaching forever.